Misen claims their carbon nonstick pan performs like traditional nonstick but lasts forever. And that bold promise led to $2 million in pre-orders and made it the most talked about pan ever. But Misen isn't the only company making pans that deliver nonstick performance without any coatings. Strata and Anolon EverLast N2 are made with similar materials and promise similar results. To find out which of these three pans is truly the best, longest lasting alternative to traditional nonstick, I ran a series of tests. I scraped them with metal utensils, simmered acidic foods, left them wet overnight to check for rust, and cranked up the heat on a powerful induction cooktop to see if they'd warp. To see which pan has better and longer lasting nonstick properties, I cooked dozens of eggs in each pan, both right out of the box and after months of use. I also ran side-by-side tests where I preheated each pan to the exact same temperature and used the exact same amount of fat. I also ran them through the same heat conduction and retention tests that I've done with over 60 other pans I've reviewed. In this video, I show you the results of my tests and give you a clear answer on whether Misen is worth the hype or if Strata or Anolon is a better buy. Before I get into the test results, it's important to understand that none of these pans have a Teflon or ceramic nonstick coating. Misen is made with 3 layers. The core layer is aluminum, and the top and bottom layers are nitrided carbon steel. Nitriding means the steel is baked in a nitrogen-rich oven, which hardens the surface, makes it more resistant to rust, and gives it better food release than raw carbon steel, even without seasoning. Anolon EverLast N2 is also nitrided carbon steel, but it's just a single layer with no aluminum core. With Strata, the cooking surface is regular carbon steel, the core is aluminum, and the exterior is stainless steel, so it doesn't need seasoning on the bottom. As I walk through the tests, you'll see how these subtle differences in materials impact performance. One of the biggest claims with these pans is durability. Since none of them have a nonstick coating, all 3 claim that you can use metal utensils without worrying about scratching the surface. To see if this claim is true, I ran some serious tests. Before I get into that, I want to quickly thank Wayfair for sponsoring this video. Wayfair's biggest sale of the season, Way Day, is happening right now, October 26th through October 29th. For 4 days only, you can get up to 80% off plus free shipping on everything. The category I'm most excited about is cookware and bakeware. You can get up to 60% off all types of cookware, including stainless steel, cast iron, enameled cast iron, carbon steel, and nonstick. There are also major deals on kitchen knives, cutting boards, and small appliances like air fryers, blenders, and mixers. It's the perfect time to upgrade your kitchen and get ready for holiday cooking and entertaining. And it's not just kitchen gear. You can get up to 80% off area rugs, up to 60% off lighting, and big savings across furniture and decor for every room in your home. Way Day ends October 29th, so now is the time to start your holiday shopping and save up to 80%. Click the link in the video description to browse all the deals. So I mentioned that Misen, Anolon, and Strata all claim to be metal utensil safe. To test that, I attached a 5-pound weight to a metal ladle and scraped it across each pan 50 times. Then I did the same thing with a metal spatula. After that, I set up a stand mixer so a whisk was in constant contact with the cooking surface for 2 straight minutes. All 3 ended up with some light scuff marks, but no deep scratches or any real damage. For comparison, I ran the same tests on a Teflon-coated pan, a ceramic nonstick pan, and a hex-clad pan. All 3 of those ended up with visible scratches or coating damage. I'll show you a little later in this video whether those scuff marks had any real impact on the nonstick performance. Warping is another concern with carbon steel pans like these, especially on induction cooktops that heat extremely fast. When different parts of the pan expand at different rates, it creates stress in the metal and causes it to warp. Since Anolon is a single layer of carbon steel, it's more vulnerable to this issue. Misen and Strata both have aluminum cores, which in theory help spread heat more evenly and reduce that stress. To test it, I measured how flat each pan was, then heated them to 425 degrees Fahrenheit on induction for 2 minutes. All 3 started out slightly concave, which is common because manufacturers build in a little curve to allow for expansion. After heating, none of them showed any visible change. For context, I've run the same test on other carbon steel pans, and not all of them have held their shape. One of the biggest differences between these pans is how they handle seasoning and rust. Misen and Anolon are made of nitrided carbon steel, and because of that, both claim you don't need to season them. Strata, on the other hand, has a regular carbon steel cooking surface, which does need seasoning. To see if Misen and Anolon's claims are true, I got all 3 pans wet and left them overnight. The next morning, none of them had any rust. Next, I simmered crushed tomatoes in each pan for 15 minutes. Acidic foods usually break down seasoning, and that's exactly what happened with Strata. Its surface went from dark and seasoned to light and patchy. Misen and Anolon were unchanged. After that, I repeated the overnight water test. Again, Misen and Anolon showed no rust. But since the tomato sauce had stripped away Strata's seasoning layer, it came back rusty. The key point is that Misen and Anolon are truly low maintenance. With Strata, you have to season it to prevent rust. And if you cook acidic foods, that seasoning can break down. Besides the extra maintenance, seasoned pans like Strata are also not the best option for liquid-heavy meals. To prove this point, I poured clean, filtered water into each pan, boiled them for 10 minutes, and then poured the water back into the glasses. The water from the Misen and Anolon came out completely clear, but the water from Strata was cloudy with a yellow tint, which means bits of the seasoning layer were breaking down and leaching into the liquid. This is normal for seasoned carbon steel or cast iron cookware, but it highlights another advantage of the nitrided surfaces of Misen and Anolon. Another key factor is how fast and evenly these pans heat and how well they hold that heat. To test that, I heated each pan on medium and measured the surface temperature at the center and edge after 2 minutes. Anolon was by far the fastest to heat, but that means it's also very easy to overheat. A few times during testing, I had to stop, open a window, and start over because the pan started smoking before I could even add food. Strata didn't heat as quickly, but it was the most even. After 2 minutes, there was only a 3-degree difference between the center and edge. And in real-world cooking, that evenness held up. When I cooked a full pan of chicken, the pieces around the edge browned just as evenly as the one in the center, which isn't always the case with cast iron or traditional carbon steel pans. To measure heat retention, I heated each pan to exactly 400 degrees Fahrenheit, removed them from the burner, and measured the surface temperature after 5 minutes. These pans are designed to be lightweight and easy to use. They're not optimized for heat retention like thicker carbon steel or cast iron pans. But within this group, Strata held its temperature the best by about 10 degrees. Maybe the most important factor with these pans is how well they release food and whether their nonstick properties change over time. Strata and Anolon both claim their surfaces become naturally nonstick over time as the seasoning builds. Misen goes further, saying it's nonstick right out of the box and only gets better with use. They've even branded their pan as nonstick. To see how those promises hold up, I cooked a variety of food with each pan for several months. I cooked dozens of eggs, pancakes, fish, vegetables, meats, and much more. Then, after all that use and after running them through my durability tests, I set up 4 controlled tests. First, I preheated each pan to 325 degrees Fahrenheit, added exactly 1 teaspoon of oil and 5 grams of butter, and cooked an egg. All 3 passed this test. The eggs slid around with no sticking. The only issue was with Anolon on my first try. Because it heats so quickly, the pan got way too hot and the egg stuck. When I preheated it slower, it worked fine. Next, I cut the fat in half, using just a half a teaspoon of oil and 2 grams of butter. Again, all 3 pans handled it without sticking. Then I tested pancakes with a light layer of butter. Misen and Anolon released cleanly, but Strata had some slight sticking. I had to work the spatula under it, but it still came out in one piece. Finally, I cooked pancakes with no fat at all. Anolon had just a little sticking, but I was able to flip the pancake without breaking it. Misen stuck badly. A thin layer of pancake stayed glued to the surface, and I couldn't flip it without tearing it. Strata had the same issue. In my day-to-day, non-controlled cooking, I haven't noticed a real difference in food release between these 3 pans. Misen and Anolon were both impressively non-stick right out of the box, and they've stayed that way for months. They're not as slick as a brand new Teflon pan, but if you don't overheat them and you use a little oil or butter, food won't stick. I haven't noticed any decline or change in their performance. The only times I've had issues were when I overheated them. Strata's performance is similar. As long as you use some fat and manage the heat, eggs, fish, and other foods release fine. The main challenge with Strata is the seasoning. If you apply too much oil or don't spread it evenly before seasoning in the oven, the surface can turn tacky and cause sticking. You can always scrub it down and reseason, but you need to season it correctly to get the same results as Misen and Anolon. Besides performance, there are a few design differences worth mentioning. The biggest one is the handles. Misen's handle is comfortable, but because it's rounded, it can get slippery, especially if you're wearing an oven mitt or washing it with soapy hands. Anolon's handle is flatter with a shallow groove on top, which gives your thumb a place to rest and makes it feel a little bit more secure. Although I wish it wasn't so thin. Strata's handle is the best design of the three. It's thicker and more substantial than Anolon, and it's flat on top with a slight groove so it won't rotate in your hand. I also like the round hanging loop instead of the usual oval. The finishes are also different. Misen has a dark matte surface that fades a little bit with use. Anolon is shiny with a bluish tint that develops a patina. And Strata starts out silvery like stainless steel, but it turns golden brown as the seasoning builds and it gets darker over time. Finally, there are a few small differences in dimensions. When comparing the 10-inch pans, all three are under 3 pounds, so they're easy to maneuver. But Misen has the widest cooking surface and the lowest walls, but the difference is minor. When you move up to the 12-inch size, the differences are more noticeable. Strata and Misen both weigh about 3 pounds, while Anolon jumps to 4.3 pounds. Some of that extra weight comes from the addition of a helper handle, but it also has taller walls. At that size, Anolon's walls are just under 2.25 inches. Strata's are just under 2 inches, and Misen's stay the same at 1.75 inches. So after all that testing, which pan should you buy? Before I give you my take, just a quick heads up, I've linked to each pan in the video description if you want to check them out. To be totally honest with you, this was one of the toughest reviews I've ever done, because all three pans perform really well, and they're all priced pretty much the same. The first decision you need to make is, do you want to deal with seasoning? If not, Anolon and Misen are your two options. Both don't need to be seasoned, they won't rust, both can handle acidic foods, and both start non-stick and stay that way. Between those two, I'd go with Misen. It's the closest replacement to a traditional Teflon-coated aluminum pan. It's light, easy to handle, and perfect for the kind of quick, everyday cooking most people use nonstick pans for, especially eggs. I'd argue Anolon is a nicer, more elegant looking pan with its polished finish and curved handle, but when you pick it up, it feels more like a classic carbon steel pan because it's heavier with taller walls. If that's what you want, it's an excellent alternative to brands like Debouille and Matfer. Strata is a fantastic pan too. It heats more evenly than the others, it's lightweight, and the handle is the best design of the three. But because it needs seasoning, and that seasoning can break down with acidic foods, it requires more maintenance than Misen and Anolon. So if you want the simplest, most low maintenance option, I'd go with Misen. If you like the idea of building seasoning yourself, go with Strata. Anolon is solid all around, but be aware that it's noticeably heavier. This is truly a case where you cannot go wrong with all three pans. If you want to learn more, check out my deep dive reviews of Misen and Strata here and here. And for more videos like this, click the logo to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.